Thank you very much, Sergeant at Arms Clive, and I will open the meeting. I've had some complaints about the tone of that bell that was extracted from the basement at York Gate, and I'm thinking of perhaps changing it to something more subtle in future. Welcome everybody, and particular welcome to all our visitors who are appearing with us for the first time. And I'd like to start actually, Clive, by asking you if you could identify those visitors so that we could say hello to them.
Thank you, President David. Can I ask the visitors, please, to unmute themselves? As I say, I can't unmute you and introduce yourself. Can we start with Bill? Bill Cleave from Trenton.
Good morning. And you were talking about history. The Battle of Trenton was a big battle in the Revolutionary War. Welcome. Good morning.
Visiting
Look forward to hearing about that later.
No, thank you, Bill. If you would like to mute yourself again. And then Habib from Rotary Club Cosmopolitan Beirut. Habib, would you just like to introduce yourself?
Greetings from Beirut. Indeed, it's Rotary Club Beirut Cosmopolitan. I just actually reverse it because when the screen gets smaller and smaller, you don't see the Cosmopolitan anymore. So it's just a little trick. It's a pleasure to be with everyone here. Thank you for the invite.
Good. Look forward to hearing from you later. And we're delighted that Sean and Amy are with us today. Sean was the global scholar last year who played a great part in the affairs of the club and managed to get the Rotaract Club going. So he's now back in the US. So Sean and Amy, would you just like to say hello quickly?
Yes, we're currently in Michigan enjoying the fall colors, and you know it's kind of surreal being back in the US after just being in London, but we're all happy to see you guys again.
Good to see you both. Thank you. Christoph from Thessaloniki. Christoph, would you just like to say hello? You're unmuted, but we can't actually hear you, but we can see you. Anyway, you're very welcome. Thank you.
And it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Patrick Spottiswoode. The Sam Wanamaker in 1970 initiated a project for the rebirth of the Globe Theatre in London. So this year is their 50th anniversary. It took 27 years from the commencement of the project initiated by Sam Wanamaker to open the doors of the new Globe Theatre in 1997. Patrick Spottiswoode, our speaker, joined the Globe Theatre 13 years before it opened, and he's been with it for 23 years since. 13 years is actually the time, about 13 years, the time that the initial Globe Theatre was opened before it burnt down. So it took 13 years of Patrick's effort before we actually got the doors opened again. And he has continued working on this project to date. And I thought that if you wanted the definition of a word, commitment, then you would only have to mention Patrick's name to actually underline what was really meant by commitment. The Shakespeare Globe was supported by international funding, and all the initial funders must be very pleased that now the outreach from the Globe has reached probably an even bigger international audience through the work of Patrick than they could have ever imagined. Just a little personal note, my first visits to the New Globe Theatre were because of a connection with a lady called Jean Strickland, who was the chair of the Globe Educational Advisory Committee some years back, and I would imagine that both Patrick and Jean both had meetings. But it was Jean who actually made sure that we first went to see the site of the Globe Theatre, and otherwise it was the Evening Standard that actually kept me in touch with all the developments from somewhere in the 70s through. So please, may I welcome Patrick Spottiswoode, our esteemed speaker for today. Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you. Most of my colleagues have begged me to mute myself for most of my career. So, so I'm only following suit. Thank you, President David, and thanks to you all for being here today. And particular thanks to Anthony Newton for inviting me, and I hope I don't let him down. I'm a little bit nervous, not only because I heard Catherine MacDonald last week, who gave a wonderful talk about the LSO, and I was a fly on the Zoom wall, but I'm also nervous of all of you folk. Nervous that I can't see you because I'm not on gallery view, and at the Globe we like to see our audience. I'll come on to that. But this is also my first talk in retirement, and so I feel in a new, I'm freshly retired, if that's not an oxymoron. I am freshly retired, so here we go. I hope it's not the last talk in my retirement. I looked for connections between Rotary and the Globe, and of course, we have some American cousins online with us today, and we are both children of Chicago. Paul Harris, as I understand, set up Rotary in Chicago in 1905, some 14 years before Sam Wanamaker was born. Our founder was born in Chicago in 1919. And indeed, it was at the Chicago World's Fair in 1934, the World's Exhibition that was held in Chicago, that Sam first saw a globe. It was the British pavilion, and obviously Great Britain at that time thought the best way of exporting British culture and British identity was to build a globe in the exhibition park. So yes, it was the genesis of both our organizations lie in Chicago. What I thought I would do today, and I know I've only got just under 20 minutes now, is just cover just some very initial thoughts on two topics, really. One is, I thought I should be upfront and honest as to why Shakespeare is important to me. I won't take very long on that. And then why Shakespeare's Globe at all? Why in the 21st century should anyone want to rebuild a theatre with no roof, no lights, an audience standing around a raised stage in the open air in London, where of course it never rains? And why on earth should you want to build a theatre without dry ice? I mean, how can you possibly put on a show today without the joy of dry ice? So let me just start by why Shakespeare. And for me, why he fuels me and has fueled me all my career and since university, was a line that his two fellow actors, John Hemmings and Henry Condell, wrote about him when they published the first folio of Shakespeare's plays in 1623. And they described how Shakespeare was, quote, a happy imitator of nature. So he was the great observer of humankind, the great observer of the human condition. And secondly, they said, he was a most gentle expresser of it. So it was not only what he was describing, what he was imitating, but it was his eloquence. And it's his eloquence, to me, the poetry of the man that has sort of kept me enraptured by his work ever since. He was a scenic poet, as one of his colleagues said, a scenic poet. He wrote for the theatre, but he was also a poet. He works on the stage, he also works on the page. And I think the other reason why Shakespeare has survived for me, and I think why he's survived all these centuries and why he's played all around the world, is that he asks questions. Shakespeare does not really set out to give us sermons. He asks questions. And he asks us to be considerate, to consider. I think the Latin, it comes from considera, which means looking up to the skies, to reflect and consider the heavens, but it also means seeing things from every side. And he asks us in his plays, he just thrusts out issues on a bare stage into the midst of a community and asks us to be considerate. And I don't know of another playwright who is as considerate as Shakespeare is today. And I think what also he's done is he's let, for theatre artists, he is not prescriptive. He has brilliantly, and cannily, not that he ever thought that his plays would be performed in the 21st century, but he's left us not with stone, he's left us with clay, with wet clay. And each generation can mold that clay to suit the needs and the issues and the questions that that generation, that culture, that theatre needs to ask of its time. So we can continually mold and reshape Shakespeare. For the purist, of course, that angers them, because there's only one way to do it. But he's not a statue, and he's malleable. And that's why I think artists adore coming back to him. And I don't know how many of you know a play that's not often performed, The Winter's Tale. But at the end of The Winter's Tale, there's the statue of Hermione. And Hermione's family gather around this memorial statue to Hermione. And Leontes, her husband, says, oh, she's warm. And Shakespeare is still warm. Yeah. And then he goes up to touch her, and he's stopped. And Paulinus says, the color's not dry. And Shakespeare's colors are never dry. They're always wet. They always have a significance. But, and this is my segue into why Shakespeare's globe, that statue comes to life, and Hermione steps off her pedestal and takes her audience, her viewers, her husband, her family by the hand. The art engages with the audience. And that's why I want to talk now a little bit, just a few thoughts about why Shakespeare's globe. Because in short, for me, it is a theatre, and Shakespeare's globe is an organization that seeks to discover and make connections with its audience. It's a theatrical space and a social space that take their cues from the audience. I don't want to tread on Anthony's toes or on any of you others of you there who are great music lovers, I know Anthony is, and Wagner lovers, but you couldn't have a more, I suppose, diametrically opposite artist to Wagner than Shakespeare in a sense, and their theatrical styles. Because Wagner, when he built Bayreuth, really thought the audience was a bit of an inconvenience. I mean, what he was doing was creating the Gesamtkunstwerk, the total work of art. And all of that work of art, the totality, was everything that was happening on the stage. Oh, have I lost you? Oh,
no, you're there.
I'm still there. Sorry.
You're okay. Yes, somebody came in. I don't know how. Thank you.
That's okay. It's what audiences do at the Globe. They come in and we can see them come in. Wagner talked about the Gesamtkunstwerk, the total work of art, which he tried to create on a stage with great success. He even had to hide the orchestra so that the audience could commune spiritually and in a transcendental way with this remarkable work of art. But the work of art, the Gesamt, the totality of that work of art, never included the audience. At the Globe, the Gesamtkunstwerk includes the audience. The audience is part of the work of art. Yeah? That actor-audience engagement at the Globe is what makes play and what makes the play happen and is essential. I'm not saying that Wagner was wrong, I'm just saying he was different. He had a different take, and I think probably Shakespeare would have loved Wagner, but he would have just done it in a different way. So what have we discovered? The Globe, for those who don't know it, it's a 20-sided, it's a polygonal wooden O, and the walls are made up of 3 galleries surrounding an open-air yard, and a stage is thrust out into that yard. And we have now up to about 700 people, we call them groundlings, standing around that raised stage. So play is thrust out into the middle of the community. The community surrounds the play and contributes to the play. In English, we say gather round, gather round. We never say gather square. And you gather round to hear a story. And the Globe was a great place where people came to hear and share stories. And the Globe, as a piece of architecture, nurtures a remarkable relationship between actor and audience. At the Globe, audiences don't come to sit at a play, they sit in a play. As I said before, they're part of the action. And the audience, if you think about going to your, I say whatever a conventional theatre is nowadays, but when you go to the theatre, you sit in a square, and the first thing they do is they turn out the lights. And so you're hidden from the rest of the community. And what your eyes are focusing on is the lit world that is the world of the stage. But in the Globe, you can always see your fellow members of the audience. I took the Bishop of London around the Globe back in 1997, the former Bishop Richard Chartres, and I tried to be, drop my religious terminology with him to impress. And I said, oh, Bishop, I said, it's a bit, the Globe is a bit like a church. I said, because you have a congregation. Grex gregis, the Latin word for crowd, con, coming together. And this is a great coming together of an audience. And the bishop brilliantly said, oh, Patrick, he said, it's such a shame. Today in churches, we tend not to have congregations. We have aggregations, people coming in spite of each other. And I said, Bishop, that's true in the theatre as well. Yeah, we're not there because of the rest of the audience is there to help us pay for the ticket, because we can't afford the show on our own. But at the Globe, the rest of the audience is part of that world of play. So it's really important at the Globe, not only, it's really important that the audience member is aware that it's part of that community. And that's helped, of course, because in the Globe, we don't have lights. And at the Globe, we actors and audience share the same light. And if any of you have ever acted on the stage with lights, you know one thing that lights do is kill the audience. Yeah, I mean, you can't see them. You maybe apart from your mother in the front row, you can't really see the audience. And in Shakespeare's theatre, the actor is always aware of the audience and always speaks with and to, and not in spite of the audience. The soliloquy in Shakespeare is not just a monologue where an actor is alone on stage thinking to him or herself. In Shakespeare, the soliloquy is an opportunity for one actor, one character, to share thoughts with the audience when the others aren't listening. So it's an opportunity for private communion between actor and audience. I think that's really crucial, and it's affected the way Shakespeare is now played all over the world because of our theatre. But as important to me is the fact that the audience can see each other. Because when you can see your fellow human being, you relax. And there is such a sense of a playground at the Globe where people relax and it becomes more informal. And it has resulted in a release of humor. A lot more humor in Shakespeare's plays is noticeable when played outdoors, when the audience has permission to laugh. And you can laugh much more easily if you can see someone else laughing. So in terms of this technology, at the Globe, you're always on gallery view. Yeah, you're never on speaker view. You're always on gallery view. You can always see each other. And at the Globe, unlike today, the audience is not muted. Yeah. In most theatres, the kind of audience is muted, is asked to be muted, to mute itself until such time as they want to give a round of applause. So I think it's released humor. I think it's released an informality. And I think the Globe, by bringing in those 700 groundlings, has brought in a crowd into Shakespeare, a crowd that some critics have not liked, a crowd that some critics didn't like back in the early 20th century when they thought the audience is what ruined Shakespeare. Had he not written for an audience, he would have written better plays. And even critics today, such as our great critic, Michael Billington, really didn't understand the Globe to begin with because he thought the crowd was getting in the way. It was making too much noise. And the Globe is a playground. And as you know, playgrounds release energies. It's a place where you go to play and relax. And sometimes the playgrounds can get out of hand. And sometimes at our Globe, sometimes the audience gets out of hand, but our actors are quite good at controlling them. So I think that's number one, is that the whole emphasis of the Globe is about discovering, uncovering, revealing exposing, engaging with an audience. The second reason why I work for the Globe is because of our founder, Sam, who believed very much in the Globe as a social space, and that what theatre should do is engage with its community. And that's where education and a lot of our work comes in, because Sam did not believe that theatres should be isolated from the community. He found it very strange when he was working on Broadway that these prime real estate sites were closed up until 7:30 at night, and then tuxedos came in and they were empty the rest of the day. And so what he wanted theatres to do were to be brimming full all day. Theatre was just one of the arts that should be celebrated. Plays, just one of the art forms. And he set up an experiment in Liverpool in the late 50s. Sad it failed, it was ahead of its time. It was the first art centre in Europe. And he believed that families should come. He had a children's cinema. He brought in factory workers on Wednesday afternoons. He actually allowed people to eat at the theatre. It was the first time you could have a meal at the theatre and not just an ice cream. So he really believed that theatre should be an active member engaging with the community. And that's why he invested in education even before the theatre was built. And again, it's about looking at your audience. That if the theatre, as in Hamlet, we talk about acting holding a mirror up to nature. And the theatre has to hold a mirror up to society. And therefore, it also has to reflect society on the stage. And I think that's where the Globe is moving now. And I think under our new artistic director, Michelle Terry, we're doing a lot, and the terms of diversity, equity, inclusivity that I know are key to Rotary, are key to our organization as well. And education departments tend to be eager to make sure that the audience is as diverse, inclusive as possible. I think what we're doing now at the Globe is ensuring that those people working in the theatre and working on the stage are as diverse and inclusive as possible. So both in terms of colour, in terms of gender, and in terms of ability and disability. And I think this is where the Globe is making some really important strides as we move forward. We this summer, sadly cancelled because of COVID, were meant to have a production of Antony and Cleopatra, which wasn't just going to be signed. Cleopatra was going to be played by a deaf actor, and she would sign her role. And when we sign performances, we don't have the sign on the side of the stage, we have them included in the company. And it's extraordinary experience, and but it does mean again that we're saying the stage should reflect and be engaged with its community. I'm going to end with two anecdotes, rather flippant anecdotes, about actors and audience coming together. The first is historic, and some of you may know this. It's probably apocryphal. It was actually written at the time of, well, Shakespeare was alive, but it was about a performance of Richard III and the great actor Richard Burbage, who was the sort of hot actor of the time. And this is what the diarist wrote. Upon a time when Burbage played Richard III, there was a citizen grown so far in liking with him that before she went from the play, she appointed him to come that night unto her by the name of Richard III. Shakespeare, overhearing their conclusion, went before, was entertained, and at his game ere Burbage came. Then message being brought that Richard III was at the door, Shakespeare caused return to be made that William the Conqueror came before Richard III. Now, whether that's true or not, I can tell you the one reason that Burbage would have accepted the assignation from that citizen wife was that he could see her during the production. There is no way you'll accept an assignation unless you've noticed the person in the audience. And in the first couple of years of the Globe, actors would leave the stage after the show, go through the foyer, see someone and say, oh, do I know you? and realized, oh no, they were in the audience. And sometimes actors asked audience members for their autographs. But more up to date, a few years ago, we put on a production of The Two Noble Kinsmen, and the lovely actor Will Keane was in the company, playing one of the leads. And sure enough, history repeated itself. He got a note backstage saying, "Dear Mr. Keane, I really enjoyed your performance. Would you possibly meet me for a coffee?" Now, being a very serious actor, Will Keane hadn't really taken stock and wasn't sure what to do, but every other man and woman on the stage, oh, she said, and I was the woman in, I don't know if you noticed me, I was the woman stage left standing with a blue floppy hat. Will Keane wasn't sure. Every other member of this company said, "Will, you've got to meet her. She was gorgeous. Go and meet her. For goodness sake, go and meet her." He went and met her. They now have a child called Daphne. It's called Audience Engagement, and for education, Audience Development. Absolutely about discovering the audience. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you very much indeed, Patrick. Your enthusiasm comes through even on a gallery view. I'm sure I was looking at the faces of the other people, and they were all engaged. In fact, I can't believe you will actually be retiring. I think that's just a temporary break of engagements.
Oh, no.
Clive, would you lead the questions, please?
Yes, indeed. Anyway, I'm going to start with Varsi. Varsi has put her hand up. Varsi, would you like to ask the first question, please? Unmute yourself and answer the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Clive. Thank you. Patrick, thank you so much for your very interesting, informative talk and giving us an insight of the globe. My question is, during the outbreak of the bubonic plague, what happened at the Globe Theatre? And also, why is it called the Globe?
Good, thank you. We're of course in Shakespeare's time, when the plague hit London, and more than 30 people a week died of the plague within a 6-mile radius of court. That's what you cared about, was the monarch. All theatres had to close. And for some periods of time, rather like COVID, we don't know how long this is going to go on. You didn't know how long plague might go on. And some actors had to give up and ply trades. Others actors tried to go on tour. Shakespeare seemed to set about writing, and he wrote some of his great long poems and his sonnets. But theatres could be closed for anything for a year, could be closed for 2-3 months, but also could be closed for a year and 18 months. So plague was the great pandemic, of course, of Shakespeare's time. Today, we go digital. As Catherine was saying with the LSO last week, we can try and do as much as we can to engage our audience with a digital means and travel in that way. And the second part of your question, I just lost it, sorry. What was the second part? Pandemic and?
Why is it called the Globe?
Oh, why is it called Globe? Yes, thank you. The first ever theatre for actors was built a few yards from where I'm sitting now in Shoreditch. It was called The Theatre, from the Latin theatrum, and they took it from the Greek, theatrum. And the theatre was dismantled in the late 1598 and carried across to Southwark and became the world. The motto was the theatre of the world, Theatrum Orbis. And I think it was quite pretentious of Shakespeare's company that they dismantled the old theatre, took the timbers across the River Thames to Southwark and decided not to rename it the theatre, but to go all for it and call it the world itself. So the theatre became the world. And the motto, if you think about As You Like It, all the world's a stage, it's a reference, of course, to the globe.
Thank you. Brian Summers, please.
Hello, Patrick. I really enjoyed your talk. It really was excellent. But what I just wanted to mention was that in 1988, when I was the president, we entertained Sam Wanamaker, who spoke to us at that time. We had quite a large audience, about 150 people, and he was enthusiastic, encouraging, and looking for great support from everybody in setting up the London Globe. So I thought that our members and you might be interested to know that he spoke to us at the Café Royal in London.
Wow, thank you for that. I love collecting Sam Wanamaker stories because I worked with him for 9 years, and he actually gave me a room in his house in lieu of pay for 1 year. So he was a real mentor and an inspiring man. And the lovely thing about Sam, though, is he not only spoke and sought audiences like London Rotary and venues like the Café Royal, but he would also speak to very small school groups and community groups. I know I subbed for him once in Southwark at the Peckham Labour Club. He was filming. He said, "Patrick, would you go and give my talk for me?" And I said, "Oh, okay." And I went, and I was expecting it to be in a hall with 150 people. It was in a front room of a terraced house with 6 people. And Sam was willing to go. Yeah, he was wanting to connect with he was a real missionary. Thank you for that.
Anthony, you next, and then Chicago.
Patrick, can you hear me?
Hi, Anthony. Yes,
we can hear you,
hello.
Anthony.
That was absolutely brilliant. I'm going to say more about it. Absolutely brilliant. Well done. My question is a slightly flippant one because you covered so much so brilliantly. I was very hesitant about what to ask you on your level. So my question is flippant with slight overtones, if you like. In the Sunday supplements, when you read about interviews, one of the questions usually leveled against a famous person is, what would your 20-year-old think of you if they could see you and hear you today? So I present that question to you. What do you think your 20-year-old would say to you today?
Why didn't you get a real job and make £1 million? I think I was very materialistic at 20. And I know, I remember thinking to myself, I want to make a lot. When I was an undergrad, I know 2 things. I don't know what I want to do in my life. I just know 2 things. One is I want to make a lot of money. And secondly, I do not want to teach. God listened and laughed and has been laughing ever since.
Chicago.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much, Patrick. It was interesting. And then I never thought about comparing Wagner and then Shakespeare before. That's great. And then I love both, artists.
Good.
Yes. And then actually, I interviewed Kingston College, Professor Golden, and then Shakespeare, Royal Shakespeare Company's director Catherine in 2016's, Shakespeare's 400, the anniversary. And then also, the published book like this, it's a Japanese book.
Yay.
But it's like 150 pages about, the Shakespeare's, and then all the, the Stratford happens, the visiting, the Shakespeare's, the old schools, and then taking pictures. My question is, the Shakespeare's, the productions all over the world, and then translating, the different languages. But it's my feeling is it's kind of because his original English version has a like a real meaning. And then when you translate it to different languages, it's kind of losing some kind of main point. And then the different cultures, the different backgrounds, the people have a different way to think. And then so it's kind of difficult to understand the original production or, the what he wanted to show the world or the people, to send in messages. What do you think about it?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. First of all, you had a globe in Tokyo before we had our globe in London, although your globe had a roof and seats, but you did. And there is the most remarkable tradition of Shakespeare in Japan. 3 Japanese translators, individuals, have translated the complete works into Japanese, which is, and you have a relatively young tradition. I think around about 1870, when trade between England and Japan opened up, is when Shakespeare started to be translated and played in Japan. So I believe there were almost more productions of, in fact, there were more productions of Shakespeare in Japan 2 years ago than in England. Right,
oh, wow.
it is remarkable, and it is remarkable how every culture and country believes Shakespeare belongs to them. That's something about the malleability of the man and the fact that he does talk to all cultures. I remember the Germans called in the 19th century said he's unser Shakespeare, our Shakespeare, he's ganz uns, he's entirely ours. And I was filmed by a Moroccan TV crew who said live on a news program, please will you agree with us for our viewers back home that Shakespeare was an Arab. Yeah?
Oh,
Shakespeare. And an Iraqi TV crew said, our audience believes he was born in Basra. Can you confirm? I said, yes, he was born in Basra, and he was born in Brisbane, and he was born in Belgium. He was born everywhere. And it's just one of the, I think that's where it's because of the questions he asks that resonate across centuries and across cultures. But you're right about translation. Translation is extraordinary because Shakespeare wrote in prose, in what we call blank verse, and in rhyme. And of course, his words are very, his puns, his playfulness is not always difficult to capture. But you know what? We all read things in translation. I read the Aeneid in translation, and we can't capture everything that Virgil meant in the original Latin. But it's about capturing the spirit as well as imitating as much as possible the essence of the work. Interestingly, when Shakespeare was writing in English, English was considered a real gutter language by the world. I mean, no one wanted to speak English. We wanted to speak, Latin or Greek if we really could, or French or whatever. English was just not intellectual at all. And we took other works and translated them into English to improve our own language. What's interesting now is that Shakespeare is being used to translate into South Sudan to improve, and German to improve their language. Shakespeare, in translating Shakespeare, you're also improving your own, you're having to find new words to suit Shakespeare's idioms. So Shakespeare, was a wordsmith, but he's also encouraging translators to think about their own language. I should just quickly say that Germany, which has the longest tradition really of translating Shakespeare, has only ever had one man who has translated all the plays. In Japan, you've had three, one man, and that man died last week. His name was Frank Günther, and he was one of the very, very great translators. And we lost him last week. He was an extraordinary man. But yeah, very difficult translation, but thank goodness we have it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to read Japanese literature in English.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mac, you have a question. Would you like to unmute yourself, please, and address your question?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you very much for your presentation, Patrick. Much well received.
Thank you.
Yeah, as a young man growing up in Bermondsey, I used to frequent the Clink and all these areas.
Oh yeah.
And which meant I was exposed to all the music, culture, all the bands and everything, going in all the studios and the rest of it, which has consequently made me also a producer. I'm into stuff like that. So what I want to ask you is definitely, Shakespeare is fundamental for English language as well as culture, and it's great that we've recognized it to the point that we wanted to restore the globe where we think it was. And we've done a good job. So what I want to know though is moving forward, because everyone's realizing more and more that the culture industries, which is an area that I'm a surveyor by day, but I'm also into the culture industries. It's what I took my master's in. So everyone realizes that's such a huge area for the economy of any country now. You know what I mean? People travel from all the world as tourists just to see landmarks like the Globe, etc., etc. And I'm just thinking, how can that? What can we take from Shakespeare in terms of the essence to improve or add on, or even transmit our British culture to the world? You know, what would you say would be the essence? Because obviously we're doing very good work with the period film, which is fantastic. But from Shakespeare himself, what would you suggest that we can take forward in that manner?
Wow, a huge question. Thank you for it. And first of all, bravo Bermondsey. That's my local borough of Southwark, of the Globe, where I lived for many years. And just to say that you probably were aware that back in the 80s, Sam, who believed passionately that the Globe should be rooted in the community of Southwark, was met with this brick wall by Southwark Council, and the council leader in a council meeting, this is back in the 80s, it's changed now, thank goodness, said, Shakespeare is a load of tosh, right? And quote, what has Shakespeare ever done for Southwark? And, you know, that was one of the battles and obstacles Sam had to face. Wow, so what can Shakespeare teach us? Dare I say, sorry, this is probably a bit flip, but going back to the original, it's about being considerate. And I think that asking questions, that's what theatre should do. And that's what he was doing. He, as I said, that, you know, the stage or sterile promontory that Hamlet talks about was thrust out into a sea of faces of the community, and they were being challenged to respond. Not to be mute,
really challenged. What you're saying, really challenging the audience, really.
To think and be eloquent. Okay. And, you know, at the time, I think the reason theatre may have been considered dangerous is that you didn't really want people to think. In authoritarian regimes, you want them to follow, not to ask questions. Yeah. And that's perhaps why theatre was censored so specifically, is because it was a breeding ground of ideas. And so there's that. I don't think I want Globe theatres like ours popping up all around the world as an export of British culture. I'd much rather the work did that. I'd much rather the plays and the ideas in the plays did that, and to challenge all artists around the world when they're I'm working with a Polish director who wants to direct Hamlet in Poland at the moment. I don't want him to replicate what we do. He's got to find the right connection with for his audience. So I think that's what it's about. It's his adaptability.
Is it possible that it was the radio station at the time where you came to hear what was really going on?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. It was the media. It was social media too, in a way. Yeah. Although probably not social media, but it was maybe Netflix.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thanks very much. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for questions. President David, can I ask you to call upon whoever's going to give the vote of thanks?
So, thank you, Clive. I'd like to propose that Anthony Newton give a vote of thanks.
Patrick, it's often a duty and obligation and really a pleasure and a delight to propose a vote of thanks. And today it's been a pleasure tonight. You're absolutely brilliant. Thanks. It's interesting you spoke about your nervousness at the beginning. If that's what nervous is, my goodness, how many of us would really want to be nervous when we give a talk of any sort whatsoever? Absolutely terrific. Thanks so much. It's fascinating the way you reflected so deeply and so concerned and so interestedly Shakespeare, the Globe, and the way it reached out to the whole community. And you did this extremely well as well. I mean, suggesting perhaps in a way you ought to stand for politics. Perhaps you should become a member of our Prime Minister, Patrick. You'd be excellent, you know. But
no, enough money.
That's true, that's true. But seriously, it reminded me, as you talked about the educational output of the Globe, I thought to myself, as you're concerned and so interested in education, the 3 E's came into my mind and how you talked about the 3 E's. In other words, you talked eloquently, brilliantly and eloquently, eruditely, and most entertainingly. And I don't think one can say I don't think one can say that about very many speakers. You've been absolutely exceptionally brilliant today, and we thank you very much for being there. May I ask everyone to show their appreciation the usual way, please, to Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anthony.
And it now falls to me, Patrick, to present you with your first retirement certificate for speaking
Oh, joy.
to the Rotary Club of London.
Thank you very much. And
which will be forwarded digitally, but the hard copy will still be kept.
thank you. And just to say quickly,
thank you very much,
David. I adore Jean Strickland. She was a mentor. She was a moving force in education for us. In fact, I spoke to her daughter just 2 days ago. So I'm a great fan of Jean's.
Thank you very much for that. She was much loved, and but actually indomitable as well in her own field. Thank you for that. I now have one or two items to cover before we get to the toasts. And I first, Rajiv, would you like to say a farewell?
Yes, thank you, President David. I would like to report our global scholar, Sean Minton, has completed his course and is on his way back home to Georgia. We can see both of them at the moment. Sean, I trust you enjoyed your stay in London, and you know you're welcome back anytime. Please keep in touch, and hopefully you'll join our Zoom meetings in the future. Local time in the USA will be about 7 a.m. When we will be in our meeting. So it's the ideal time for you. So no excuses. So all I can say now is, may I, on behalf of the Rotary Club of London, wish you and Amy great success in the future. And it was a pleasure having you and Amy with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajiv. It was an awesome, amazing trip to be there a year, to meet all of you. Special thanks to Tim, David, Julian, Ian, Clive, Rajiv, Chicago, Hugh, Hiko, and many more that made our trip wonderful and special and made us feel welcomed. And we definitely want to come back and visit sometime. So thank you all for everything.
Thank you very much. I'd also like to celebrate Candy Aliu's birthday. Congratulations on achieving another birthday, Candy. I do have a pen here, the Rotary Club of London pen, which has been sent digitally to a large number of our members over the last few months. And I hope you actually will see an actual one in the foreseeable future. We really look forward to the first physical meeting. I'd now like to announce the speaker for the next meeting, which is Sir David Omand. He's a former director of DCHQ, permanent secretary of the Home Office and UK Security and Intelligence, visiting professor in the Department of War Studies, King's College, and PSI Sciences Po in Paris, where he teaches intelligence studies. He's a senior advisor to Paladin Capital Group, investing in cybersecurity matters. So another of our global risk analysts. We've had, I think, 3 in the last 5 weeks. And we very much look forward to hearing him speak next week. Now, we're about to have our first social activity of my presidency. And could I ask Tim McAndrews to tell us about what we will be doing this coming Halloween?
Thank you, President David. My first line was going to be, we're about to have our first social event of your presidency, but you've taken it away from me. Anyway, members of the Rotary Club of London, we are about to have a proper social event next Saturday. I'm sure you have all read your emails on the subject, but it is going to be an informative and entertaining evening with a serious theme. And the aim of the evening is to raise awareness of and to raise monies for causes relating to domestic violence. October is, of course, the month it's called Speak Out Domestic Violence Awareness. There's so many things that the CNV and Isabella have planned for the evening. We are going to have entertainment from a young, talented pianist called Nilesh Thakur. He has been playing classical music since he was 7 years old. He's been on all around the world playing music with orchestras. He will be our musical entertainer. The second part of the evening, if you like, it is headed a cheese and wine event. You will be advised or have been advised of a couple of specific wines to go and buy from Waitrose. And we are going to have commentary on those wines by Patrick McHugh, who is an author and wine and food connoisseur. So if you're going to be coming along and you want to get into the mode of it, make sure that you buy at least, at minimum, those two specific wines that have been identified. One is called Le Grand Ballon, which is a Sauvignon Blanc, and the other is a Cave de Lugny Cremant de Bourgogne Blanc de Blanc. You can tell I got grade 9 in O-level French, can't you? Anyway, those are the two wines you need to get hold of if you want to get in the food and wine part of it. We're going to have a presentation for Mary Lidington. Who is she? She is David Johnson's wife, but you might not recognize that from the flyer. And she has got involved in making some shoulder bags with pamper packs to help women on the road to recovery who have suffered from domestic violence. Caroline Muir will then be introducing a couple of charities who will speak briefly to us. And we will then have our main speaker, Juliana Perez, who of course will be speaking on domestic violence. If you're not a member of our club, if you go on district notices, you will find a link on there to sign up and come along. You are all extremely welcome to do so. And as far as club members are concerned, I look forward and hope to see you all on Saturday night. I know most of us have empty diaries at the moment, so there's no excuse for not being there. Thank you very much, President David.
Thank you, immediate past President Tim. And he failed to mention that the compere for the evening with that inimitable voice is immediate past President Tim. Thank you. Now, are there any committee chairs statements, or has the Almoner got a report?
The Almoner has got a report. Good afternoon, President, fellow Rotarians and visitors. It's not always that I have good news, but on this occasion I do have good news. Our very much loved member John Buchanan, past President John Buchanan, has come home after a very difficult time in hospital. Mary phoned me to tell me the good news, and then John came on the phone. He sounded very pleased and very happy. He's obviously got a recovery to go through, but we're absolutely delighted that he's home. Hopefully he'll be coming on Zoom soon, and we'll look forward to seeing him. So that's it really, except to admire your very theatrical velvet jacket, David. I think it looks very smart.
I thought I was going to the theatre. Right. That leaves me to Brian.
Yes, yes, I'm unmuted. President and members, I thought you'd like to know that I spoke to Margaret Nimmo last week. She is the widow of our member Bill Nimmo. She unfortunately could not attend due to illness, our Christmas dinner or lunch last year. She's not in a very happy mood. She's unfortunately broken her hip, and I'm certain that she would welcome more calls. So I've got her telephone number. If anybody does want to give her a ring, if they'd phone me, I'd give her details. But on a slightly other note, more sad, I also attempted to contact last week Renata Bell, widow of our past president, Ray Bell. Unfortunately, she died at the weekend. And again, she did not attend our last Christmas lunch due to having fallen over. She died, unfortunately, very peacefully and very quickly. But I thought that you'd like to know that. Bobby has asked me to let all members who knew Renata, that's Bobby, her daughter, to let all members know the situation. and she hopes to be in touch to let us know details. So that's it, President. Sorry for being a harbinger of not good news, although, as I say, Margaret Nimmo is recovering well, but a bit miserable, I think. Thank you very much.
I was saying there were no other hands I've seen waving, so I'll move to the toasts to close the meeting. So if you have your vessel with contents to hand, we have 2 toasts to do. The first one is to the Queen.
The Queen.
The Queen. And the second is our final toast of the day, which is to Rotary and peace the world over.
Rotary and peace,
Rotary and peace the world over.
Rotary and peace the world over.
The world over. Meeting closed.